Hello and welcome to this short series on how to draw battle maps with Tom Kartos. That's me. Hi. So we have our finished battle maps, but there is still more that we can do now that we have all of the key information in place. Creating variants may seem like something that's more appropriate for myself and other creators to do as we try to offer more to our patrons and customers, and perhaps that's the route you're looking to go down if you want to be a creator yourself. But if you're just making these maps for your own game, it can still be useful to have these kinds of variants, particularly if you know your PCs are going to be revisiting a place after an amount of time, and you want to be able to show that passage of time in the map itself. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can create some simple effects in Photoshop to turn these maps into night and winter variants. If you want to follow along or get a closer look at how I set everything up, don't forget to download the PSDs and all the related art assets from the link in the description below. First up, we're going to create the night variant, and this consists of two separate parts. The first is to create the night overlay itself, and the second part is to add in some lighting effects. If you're using certain virtual tabletop software, such as Foundry, then you can do all this in the app. But if you want to set it up on the battle map itself, this is the process we're going to follow. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Night, and this is above all of my other folders aside from the adjustments layer. Now I'm going to create two new layers in there. One of them I'm going to call Night as well, and the other one I'm going to call Darken. Both of these I'm going to set to overlay. And then I like to use a purple color for my night filter. You can choose pretty much whatever you want. It's really up to you and your personal preference. But this is the particular color I use. I'll just put it up on screen in case you want to get the color information so you can copy it. I have that saved as a color swatch in my library because I like to use the same color across my map so I'm consistent. I'm just going to fill both of those layers that I've just set up with the purple color. And you can see immediately that kind of darkens everything and adds this general purple color to it. So it's starting to look like it's nighttime already. But what I want to do next is I'm going to set the darken layer down to about 50% because that's a bit too dark, I think. And I'm also going to apply a layer mask to it. Now the night filter applies over everything, but darken I like to just apply to the outdoor exterior areas. Anything that's going to be lit up, I erase it away. And that just means that our interiors are going to be slightly brighter than our exteriors. This helps from a gameplay perspective. It means you can see more in the spaces you would expect to see more. It also makes the image a little bit easier to read. You can clearly see the spaces that are intended to be used. I'll also just lighten up this path at the front and this area where we're going to have a lantern. Same in these two places where we're going to have a lamp. And up here by the stables. What I also like to do is cool the colors down a little bit. And when I say cool the colors, what I mean is edge everything over to the blue end of the color spectrum. When we talk about warm colors, we're talking about yellows, oranges, and reds. So to do that, I'm going to go down to my adjustment layers. This is the same place we get our patterns. And I'm going to go to photo filter. Then I'm going to bring out my properties and I'm going to choose the cooling filter 80. So you can see that if I switch that off, then everything looks a little bit more vibrant and towards the warm end of the color spectrum. With it on, it just cools everything down a little bit, and I think that helps add to the nighttime effect. I recommend playing around with different filters, different colors, different overlays until you get the effect that you want. You're welcome to copy my workflow, but it's really going to be down to your personal art style and preference. So now that we've darkened up the map, we need to go in and add in some light sources. Now you may decide that this is going to be late at night and all the lights are out, or maybe only one or two are active. It's really up to you how many of them you want to switch on or off. I'm going to put them all on for now just to show you how I do it. And there's a few different ways depending on what the light source is. So in my lights subfolder, in my assets folder, I'm going to create a few new layers. We'll go through them one at a time. First, I'm going to do a layer for the fire. It's going to go in the fireplace. And this I'm going to set to vivid light. Now I have a brush here that I like to use called Weird Paint. I think it came from a Carl Webster brush pack, so you should be able to get it for free with your Adobe Cloud subscription. All Carl Webster brush packs are available with that. And then I'm going to choose two different colors, a foreground light color and a background light color. And again, you can see I have these saved. Yeah, cool, thanks Photoshop. I have these saved in my library swatches because I like to use the same ones on my maps. So with these two colors selected, I'm going to go into my brush settings and I'm going to go to color dynamics. And here I'm going to set the foreground background jitter up to 100%. What this does is when I'm painting with the brush, it's going to jump back and forth between these two colors I've selected and also use a variety of hues in between. So I'll just show you what that looks like large. You can see there's all sorts of yellows, oranges, and reds in there. And because it's on vivid light, it creates this really cool effect. Without vivid light, it looks kind of dull. But the vivid light just makes it look really fire-like and exactly the look we're going for. So I'm going to go into all of my fireplaces and just paint that around. Let's have a little bit coming out from the underside of the pot. Here we can go a little bit more wild because we don't have any other assets in the way. Nice big warm roaring fire for our tavern floor and one on the other end as well. So that's how I create my fire effect. Super quick, super easy. If you can't find the exact same brush that I'm using, don't worry about it. You can just use anything with a bit of a shape to it and scatter. Make sure to change the color dynamics. That's the most important part. Then we've also got a bunch of candles in here. So for my candles, what I like to do is create a layer that has a stroke. I'll go for about 3 point. And I'm still using the same brush with the foreground background jitter and the same colors, but this time it's just on normal layer mode. I'm just going to go to my candles and add a little flame to each of them. You could do this with the vivid light as well, but I find it doesn't work quite so well on these smaller areas, so I prefer to just leave it set to normal. So I'll go around and quickly light all of my candles. I think that's all of them. Now, as I was going around, I noticed I'd missed out the braziers, so we're going to do them back on the fire layer in exactly the same way. And we're just going to add a little bit of heat to these. And the vivid light does interact with the colors underneath. So obviously when we're putting it on top of the logs, they're quite a bright color already, so you get this really bright fire. The braziers have coal in them, which is a darker color, so the fire isn't quite so vivid, but I feel like that's appropriate. You wouldn't get such a roaring fire from the coals. So I'll just check, see if we've got any more sources that I'm missing. I think that's all of them. I've probably missed one here or there, but that's okay. We can go in and add them back in later on. All these layers will be kept separate. So like I always say, we're going for a non-destructive workflow, which means we can make changes or edits at any point in the process. Now that we have some light sources, I need to actually add the light effects in. So we've got our fire, but that would throw off a glow, as well as these lanterns that we have scattered around the room. So these last two layers that I've set up, the first one I'm going to call glow, the second one I'm going to call light, and the glow effect, or the glow layer, I'm going to set to soft light. The light layer I'm going to set to hard light. And I'm going to use these two same colors that I already selected before for my foreground and background colors. For the glow, I'm going to use this lighter desaturated yellow. And I'm going to grab my airbrush, or you can use your soft round brush. I'm going to go around everywhere where I've got a light and just softly brush in that glow. I'm going to, just to help myself not go outside the area that I want, I'm going to quickly select each room. In fact, I can probably select the entire bar area here, as some of these lights, particularly the fireplaces, will cross from one into the other. I'll turn my grid off. If I didn't have this selection, when I added this glow, it would overlap into the kitchen behind, which I don't want. I just want to keep it in this room. Make sure I'm on the right layer, so the soft light layer for the glow. And this just adds a subtle outer effect. For the lanterns, I go for somewhere around a 600 or 700 pixel brush. I'm just going to quickly go around and do each of these. It's a very fast process. I think that's all of those. Then we'll do the same again for the candles. This time I'll go smaller because it's not going to throw out so much light. They're not quite so bright. The lanterns on the wall might be oil lamps. Maybe they're electric, depending on your setting. Or maybe they're magical. Who knows? It's entirely up to you. So once we have all the candles done, then finally we can do the fireplaces. Just add that into my selection. The fireplaces, I go much bigger, maybe something around 1200 to maybe even 1500 pixels. I really want that throwing light out into the room to show that it's a major light source. We'll do the same over here. And then we'll go to the light layer. Everything is called light. That's a little bit confusing, but the light layer in the light group set to hard light mode. And I'm going to get my more saturated, slightly oranger yellow color. And I'm going to go around with the same thing, but with just a smaller brush. So here where we had 700 pixels for the lanterns, I'm going to go for about half of that. So I'll go for 400. I'm just adding that in. So the light is brighter, closer to the source. And then as it goes out, it kind of scatters and becomes less saturated and less bright. For the candles, I'll go in and just give each one its own little glow. Let's see, where else have we got them? One up here on this table in the corner. And then a few in our back dining room. And then the same for the fire. I'll go for probably around 700 or 800. Maybe a bit bigger because we've got quite a large fireplace and I want this to go out of the fireplace. And there. So we have all our base light in, but obviously this doesn't entirely make sense in some places. For example, the light coming from these lanterns wouldn't be lighting the space behind the post. The fireplace wouldn't be getting into these corners. So we're just going to go through and make some slight edits to that. So to do that, I'm going to go to my light group and add a layer mask to it. Still with the airbrush, I'm going to make sure I've got the black color selected, so I'm removing color. And anywhere where we've got a corner where the light would be blocked, I'm just going to paint it out. So coming from our fireplace will be something like this. I need to make sure I don't edit the light where this lamp is. Just get it on that corner. With these posts, just kind of roughly going from the corner out. We'll go around and do the same on all of those. And this is just going to make everything look a little bit more believable. And then we need to do the same for this fireplace. So that's just throwing light out to the front and not the sides. So I think that should about do it. Now the last thing we need to do is adjust it where the actual lamps themselves are. The light isn't coming out the top of the lamp, it's coming out the sides. So we don't want that light showing up on top. So what I can do is I can hold Command and click on my wall mounted layer, which is where all the lamps are. And that's going to select everything in that layer for us. And then we can easily just paint out all of those without accidentally erasing any of the areas that we don't want to get rid of. One up here. And I think that's all of them in the bar area. So that's pretty much it. It's a very simple, very quick way to get lighting effects in. I'll go around now and do the rest of the lights on the map, and I'll see you in a minute. So now we have our finished night variant for the lower level of this map, and we need to go and do the same thing to the upper level. There is one thing that we can do to slightly save ourselves a little bit of time though, and that's to duplicate all the lights and the night filter that we already have on this map to the upper layer. So I'm going to go to my upper level, my mezzanine and bedrooms level, and I'm going to click on the assets folder, because when I duplicate something from another folder, it's going to come in above whatever I have selected at the moment. So I can duplicate my entire night group. I'm just right clicking on it and going up to duplicate group. That's currently hidden under my face, but I promise you it's there. And then we can select the file that we want it to go into, the bedrooms file. And you can see that's going to bring it in. And we don't really need to make any adjustments. I could go to the layer mask we set up and just darken up this area, as that's no longer an interior area. And maybe the same with some of these outdoor areas. But otherwise, we can leave it pretty much as is. Then if we go into our assets folder and lights, we can bring up the lights from below as well. Just duplicate those and they should come into the right place. So I'll just drop them in there and I'm going to relabel this as below. Obviously, some of those lights are in the wrong place. We don't want them to show up in the rooms that we've got upstairs, but we do want the lights to show up where we can see down to the level below. So what I can do, same way that we've set up some of our layer masks in the past, I can go to my textures and I can just select all the textures by holding Command Shift and clicking on the layer mask. I'll do the same thing for the walls. Go around each of these, just hitting Command Shift and clicking on each one. And that's going to select all of the walls and all of the textures. You can see there where the little marching line is going around. And I can use that to edit the layer mask we already have. So if I hold Option and click on the layer mask here, you can see this is where we've already edited it. I'm just going to get my square brush, select the black color, just make it nice and large, just paint over that whole selection. And now, when I hold Option or Alt again and click on the layer mask, go back, you can see all the lights that we don't want are gone. And we just have the lights showing from the areas that we can see below. So all the outdoor lights, the lights in the tavern floor that we can view down on the mezzanine, and the ones hidden under these rooftops as well. Once we have that in place, we can just go around and apply exactly the same process as we did on the lower floor. So I'll do that now. So that's our upper level complete. I'll quickly do the same thing for the rooftop. And what I'll show you there is how I apply smoke effects as well. So let's open up our roof level. I'm going to do the same as I did before and just copy across the lower lighting levels and the night filter. I'll do that now. Duplicate our group, bring it across. And in this case, I'm just going to remove the layer mask from the darken layer because we don't have any interior spaces, so the whole thing can just be evenly dark. Then we'll bring up our lights from below. And this time I'm just going to take that whole lights layer that has the below layer from the first level and combine them. Duplicate that and bring it up. And then all I need to do is select all of my layers and remove them from this group. Still in my lights group, I'm going to create a new layer and call it smoke. This isn't a light, but it's only going to be on when the fireplaces are lit. So it makes sense to just have everything in the same group when you want to switch it on and off. And I'm going to use one of these brushes from Jonas Duro. You can get his brush pack for free. I believe I got it from his DeviantArt page, but I'm not sure if that's still active. You should be able to find it if you search Jonas Duro brush pack though. And we've got a few options in here. I quite like this fog brush. And I'm going to pick a very desaturated yellow, almost a grey, somewhere in the middle. And then just coming out from the chimney, slowly make the brush larger as we get further away to make it look like the smoke is spreading out as it comes out. Do that for each of these. You could also do this in the day version if you want to have your fireplace lit during the day. That might make sense for the one in the kitchen. Cool. Spinning rainbow wheel of death. Nice. Then I'm going to pick a lighter grey colour and just add in a little bit of highlight to that smoke cloud. And that's it. We have a nice smoke effect up on our rooftop. We have all of our lights in place, and that is the night variants finished. So next we'll have a look at how I make my winter variants. So to get started on the winter variant, first thing I'm going to do is switch off our night layers and lights. We can always put these back on once the winter variant is complete. The two will work together, so you can have a night-winter version of your map if you like. Then I'm going to go down to where I have my textures folder, and above that, create a new folder I'm going to call ground snow. Six episodes in, I still can't spell. And I'm going to color it blue, just as a reminder, so when I want to switch these layers on and off my variants, I can very quickly find where I need to turn layers on and off. In that folder, I'm going to get a pattern, one of my textures. This is from textures.com, and this one is a snow pattern. You can see it's quite a subtle one. It's just got a light bit of texturing to it. You could probably do something similar with just a simple color layer, but I'm going to use this for now. And then we need to make sure that we've only got the snow where we want it. So obviously we don't want it inside. So to make that easy, I'm just going to hold Command, click on the layer mask I set up for the exterior shadows, and then apply that to the ground snow group. Then I'm also going to go to the layer mask for my snow pattern and just get rid of that entirely to start with, because I want to place it exactly where I think it's needed. I have a brush I like to use for my snow textures. It's this snow texture brush here. And this one comes from the Evident Design brush pack. You can also get those for free by going to his website and signing up for the newsletter. I'll leave a link in the description. But otherwise, you can use the chalk brush that comes as standard with Photoshop or something similar to that. So I'm going to click on my layer mask for the snow. I'm just going to start adding this in around the outside. I find with the snow, what I tend to do is I kind of add it in most places I want it, but go a little bit too far with it and then come back and subtract. And it's a bit of a process of back and forth to get it looking how I want it. I'm not looking for total ground coverage, although that may be a bit more realistic depending on how much snow has fallen. I find it's a bit more interesting to look at on the battle map if I go for something slightly rougher and more organic. Now, I won't put too much on the road because we've probably got heavy traffic going past, lots of carts, lots of wagons, lots of horses. Maybe I'll just do some little bits in the middle where maybe people are walking towards the edge of the road or the carts are going over. And now I'm switching to black and I'm going to start editing some of this away where I don't think it's needed. So we've got a brazier over here. You probably would have melted some of the snow away. We'll get rid of that. Same with this fireplace back here. It would have been a bit warmer, so the snow might not have settled quite so much. I think around these flower borders, maybe the tavern keeper is trying to keep the snow off, so that's all been pulled back. Same with this brazier here. The snow probably would have melted away. I think we probably have some tracks going to the stables, so we'll just get rid of some of that. You can see how this brush works is it's got a lot of texture and tooth to it. So it's just getting rid of little bits of it depending on how hard I push. If you are using a tablet with pressure sensitivity, then you're going to have a little bit more control when you're doing something like this. And let's bring a bit more in here. Have some areas maybe where snowdrifts are built up, particularly around the back. And we'll have maybe a little bit of snow around the edges here as well. Just kind of something you want to keep going with until you feel like it looks right. We've got a cart here, so maybe where that cart's been pulled in, we'll have some tracks leading away under the tree. Probably someone would have come out to pick up some of this wood, so let's just have some of that snow trodden away. And it's really just kind of thinking about particularly where people are going to be walking, where the snow is going to have been worn away, where it might have been melted, and just keep going with it until you've got something you like the look of. I think this is working for me. So the next thing I'm going to do is apply a stroke to the snow, but we're not going to do our usual thick black line. Instead, I'm going to apply a line that's a dark blue purplish color. Quite a lot of saturation. And I'm going to bring the opacity of that down to about, I'll go for 60% and set it to multiply. And you can see what this does is it adds a nice edge to our snow texture, but it's not so harsh and in your face as it is with all of the other outlines. So it just looks a little bit more organic, a little bit more fresh. Now that I've got that in place, I can see some areas where maybe I want to add in a bit more snow or take it away. In particular, we need to deal with what's going on this terrace here. Just go around and see if there's any other areas that I think need cleaning up now that we've got this stroke in place. This is looking a little bit too unnatural. So we'll just work in a little bit more over here. A bit more at the back and around the sides. And I think that will do. Now on the terrace here, I'm going to get rid of the snow that's just overlapped onto there because I want to do this with a little bit more control. Now I'm going to have some snow on here because it's outside, it's not covered, so some would have fallen on here. But I don't want to have quite so much because this probably would have been swept in the mornings. You'd have tavern goers coming out, sitting down, moving around. So there wouldn't be quite so much snow there. So I've still got the area selected. I'll go back to my snow texture brush and maybe we'll just put some in kind of around the edges where maybe they brushed it into or they haven't been able to get to, or it's just fallen and no one's really bothered about it too much. So we can still see that the snow is there, but it's all been swept away. Maybe we'll have a little bit down the middle here as well, as people have tracked it around on their boots. Something like that. So that will do for our base texture. Now there's a couple more things I'm going to do here just to help really sell the idea that this is a winter version of the map. First is to desaturate all of the ground textures below the snow. So I'm going to set up a new adjustment layer with our familiar tool down here. I'm going to go and select a hue saturation adjustment. And if I just bring that out so you can see the properties, I'm going to set the saturation to -20, and that's going to affect all the ground textures underneath. I'll bring that down below my snow layer. You just see if I zoom out, particularly around the road and the grass, it's just taking away some of the vibrancy of those colors and making the grass maybe look a little bit more dead, the soil look a little bit more frozen. Then on top of my snow layer, I'm going to create a clipping mask, and I'm going to set this to, I think, soft light. We might come back and change that, I'll see. And I want to apply a gradient to the snow. So if you look at snow, you'll notice that when sunlight hits it, it's very reflective. So you get a lot of bounce back where the sun is on it. Where the sun isn't on it, you get these kind of blue shadows. Snow never gets too dark, but you do get differences in those areas. So I'm going to get a gradient that's going to start off as a light yellow, and then go to a dark blue. So grabbing my gradient tool, same as we used for applying a slope to the roof textures, and on my gradient level, I'm going to go from bottom left where our light source is to top right. And that's just going to mean that the bottom left corner is a little bit brighter and the top right corner is a little bit darker. Again, it's a subtle effect, it's something you don't have to do, but it's just something that adds a little bit more to your textures. Now you also may notice that where we painted in the snow around the terrace, we painted over our drop shadow. So I'm just going to go down here and I'm also going to create a new clipping mask layer that's going to be a shadow. Set that to multiply. Instead of our usual dark purple shadow color, I'm going to go for a dark blue instead. Still very desaturated, but just slightly blue rather than purple, for the reasons I talked about before in the way that light interacts with snow. So we'll just go around the edge of our terrace and add that back in. Might even go a little bit darker and more saturated with that. See how it looks. Okay, so we have the ground texture snow in place. We now need to go and add some snow to our assets, and we're also going to add a couple of filters to make it look more immersive. So to do that, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to put it above my assets folder. I'm going to call it Snow Effects and also make it that same blue color. Then I'm just going to take our snow texture from below and the gradient, and I will just hold Option and drag those up and it will create a copy of them for me rather than me having to set up the texture all over again. Just drop that into my snow effects and we'll reset the layer mask by deleting it, creating a new one and filling it with black. I'm going to turn the stroke off for now and get back my snow texture brush. Then, because I want to first apply snow to some of the assets, like the trees, these tables, and maybe the signpost, I'm going to make myself a selection to make my life a bit easier by holding Command and just clicking on the furniture and the trees layer. Any others? Probably the items below layer as well. So I now have those selected. And that selection is a little bit distracting. So I'm going to hold Command or Control and hit H, and it's going to hide those lines, but the selection is still there. You'll see in a second. So if I want to start painting some snow on my table, I can only paint over the table and the chairs. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of fallen snow around the edges of the tables and the chairs. I'll do the same thing a little bit on the bench over here. I don't want to put too much. Again, this should look like it's kind of being used. Then I'll go and add some onto my trees. And I'm just kind of following the shapes that are already there, but you can be quite rough with it. There we are. We've got this rock here that probably needs some snow on it. Maybe this one here as well. Put a little bit on top of our lamppost and our signboard. A little bit in the wagon. And some on top of this tree. And it's really up to you how you want to place this, how much you want to add, if you want to place it at all. It'll make the map a little bit more legible without it, but it might look a little bit odd to have a bunch of snow on the floor and none on any of the objects. We'll place some in this wheelbarrow up here as well. Maybe this hasn't been moved in a while, so it's got quite a lot in it. We've got some more rocks that we need to apply to. And I think that's everything we need for now. The rest of this is undercover or partially undercover or would have been moved often enough that snow probably wouldn't have had time to settle on it. So now we need to add some shadows to this. So I'll make a new clipping mask layer. I'll move it above my gradient, set it to multiply. And we're also going to use the dark blue color instead of the dark purple for our shadows, same as we did for the drop shadow. So I still have that color selected. And I'm just going to do exactly what I did before when I was applying my ambient shadows. Just paint over the areas where it's needed. Shouldn't require too much. So most of these areas aren't in shadow because they're not undercover. Just do the back side of these rocks. And I think that should do it. Now that we have that fallen snow in place, I'm going to apply a couple of filters to this. The first one is just a simple blue overlay filter. So I'll make a new layer and I'm going to fill it with this slightly lighter blue color, almost in the cyan range. I still have my selection from before, if you remember. So if I press Command-Control-H, that will bring that back. And I can hit Command-D to deselect. So now that I've done that, I can fill again, and it should cover the whole canvas. And then I'm just going to set that to overlay. And that just gives everything a cooler feel. It's similar to what we did with the cooling photo filter for the night variant, and you could do that the exact same way. This is just a different way of achieving the same effect. And the last thing we're going to do for our snow variant is create some falling snow. So I'll create a new folder for my falling snow and title it appropriately. And we'll also give this that blue color. I'm going to create a new layer and I'm just going to fill it entirely with white. And then we're going to go up to Filter, Noise, and Add Noise. We want to make sure that this is set to Gaussian and monochromatic. And then we're going to set the amount probably about where we started, 60 to 65% should be fine. Then we are going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And we're just going to push both of these dark tones and midtones all the way over. So these little arrows here that are gray and black, we're just going to slide them all the way over to the right. And that's going to darken up a whole bunch of our colors. Now we're going to want to get to a point where it kind of looks like a starry night. Something around there should do the job. And you'll notice once I apply this, it won't look exactly the same. But it's okay, it's still applied the effects that we need it to. The next thing you want to do is go up to Filter again. And this time we're going to go to Filter Gallery. And it should bring you a pop-up that looks something like this. So we're going to go into the Sketch folder and we're going to select Torn Edges. And you can play around with the settings here, but you just want to go for something that looks a little bit like falling snow. So I think the settings I have there are okay. The contrast is going to be how much you have. So if you want a lot of snow, you can go low. If you want less, you can go a bit higher. I'll go for somewhere in the middle and then hit OK. So now what we have is a black canvas with a bunch of white scribbly dots on it. We're going to set the layer mode to screen. And now you can start to see the effect we're going for. If I zoom in a little bit, we've got these nice little falling snowflakes. And depending on the look that you're after, that could be enough. But we're going to go a little bit further with it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the layer because I want the snow to be a bit stronger. I'm going to merge both of those, but then I'm going to need to reapply the screen blend mode. And then I'm going to go up to Filter for a third time, go to Blur, and I'm going to go to Motion Blur. And I'm going to set my angle. So I'm going to have it going bottom left to top right because that's how we've set everything else up. And I just like that kind of type of motion. And distance, I think we'll go for around 15. And that's going to make it look like our snow is moving. So we've got a little bit more of a blizzard effect. But this is still looking quite light. So I'm going to duplicate it again. And this time I'm going to, with my marquee tool, select the top quarter or so and just stretch that out across the entire canvas. So now we have two levels. We have the lighter snow underneath and then the heavier snow on top. Last thing we need to do is set up a layer mask so we don't have snow falling inside the building. So we do already have the interior layer mask that we set up for our shadows, but that doesn't include the walls and we don't want the snow falling into the walls. So we're going to go to our walls folder. I've gone right past it, haven't I? We're going to go to our walls folder and holding Command and Shift again, we're going to click on all of the layer masks, just go through and add them to the selection. Now I will invert that selection and we will apply it to our falling snow. Now we might want to just make some slight adjustments to that. So particularly we've got this area here, which is undercover. And maybe just a little bit further around there where there's a roof, it wouldn't be falling quite so hard. Maybe we'll just take away a little bit around the edges of the building and around the back. And anywhere else that you think there might not be snow falling, maybe behind cover of the trees, or anywhere where you've got a little bit of a roof hanging over the top. Now I'll go ahead and apply that exact same process to the upper two levels, but it's going to be much quicker because we don't have to do all of the outside area. It's really just the roof tiles, and those are pretty quick and simple to do. You can see the finished versions of those here and here. If you want to get a closer look at both of those files, you can download them below. So that's everything that I do to create my winter variants. Now, as I said before, we can turn back on our night variant and our lights, and you have a nighttime winter variant. And you can play around with all these kinds of filters, dropping in different textures, and get whatever kind of variant you need for your map. So that's going to bring us to the end of this introductory series on how to draw battle maps with Tom Kartos. Still me. We'll just quickly recap what we went over. So we initially did some research and looked for reference images, which helped us create our box plan. We then refined that and turned it into our sketch layout. We used textures, either ones we made ourselves or that we got from a third party, and laid out our walls and floors. We applied some depth to the battle map with shadows and lighting. We furnished our rooms with assets and props. And then finally, we made the night variant and the winter variant. Now that might be the end of this particular series of videos, but I want to hear from you what other videos you would like me to make. What do you think I missed in this series? What do you think I didn't go over in enough detail? What would you like to see me make? Let me know in the comments below. Or you can come over to my Discord channel and ask me a question. The link is in the description below. Thanks so much for watching this whole series. I really hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. Don't forget, you can download all of the PSD files for these maps, plus all of the art assets that go with them. That includes the textures and all of the assets, as well as the exported files for playing the maps yourself in the description below. Until next time, thanks so much. I'll see you again. That's the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you found it useful or enjoyed it, please give it a like or maybe share it with a friend. If you have any ideas for future videos I could make or anything you'd like to see me do, please leave it in the comments below. If you want to skip making the maps yourself and get instant access to literally hundreds of pre-made maps, check out my Patreon. We also have map assets, creature and character tokens, 5e adventures, Foundry VTC ready modules, and tons more, including plenty of free content. Go over to patreon.com/TomKartos to check out what we have. I also stream my map making for patrons in my Discord server, so feel free to drop in, ask me some questions, watch me work, and just hang out. All the links are in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.